Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just gonna let people join in for the next couple of minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, Carla. Thank you for joining us. Just a couple more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I think we're good to go. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's event. My name is Gwendolyn Manak Atketuak. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm from Sitnasauk or Nome, Alaska. I'm very excited and honored to be a part of this series and assisting as facilitator today. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that this event is going to be recorded for those who are unable to attend. We will start out by acknowledging that those at our Trothyeta campus in Fairbanks are on the unceded customary lands of the Dana people of the Tanana River. In Nome, we are on Inupiaq, Yupik, and Siberian Yupik lands. We honor the continued fight for the rights of First Peoples and stand together in solidarity and action. At UAF, we are growing into a socially just and caring institution of higher education. This ongoing speaker series titled Shine a Light, promoting conversations on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility is designed to encourage understanding, build empathy, and engage us in thinking critically about our worldviews. The series is led by UAF's Northwest Campus, but like all great diversity efforts, there are many partnerships and collaborations. We thank the University of Alaska Fairbanks Office of Rights, Compliance, and Accountability and the UAF Nanak Diversity and Action Center for teaming up with Northwest Campus to bring this series to reality. This semester, our Shine a Light events are during the noon hour of each third Tuesday of the month. Again, thank you for being here today for today's event, and we hope that you continue to join us. Today, we will be having a Shine a Light special, a panel discussion on identity. The panelists will explore what being Indigenous and Native means to them, how various aspects of their identities interact with one another, and the relationship between their self-perception and how others perceive them. I would like to now have the panelists introduce themselves and thank each of you for being here for today's discussion. Darlene?
Thank you. My name is Darlene Trigg. I am Inupiaq. My Inupiaq name is Paqpaluk. I was born and raised in Nome or Sitnasauk. And let's see. I bring to this conversation my experience as a mother, as a community member, as a person who has focused on thinking about how to bring Indigenous ways of thinking and being into any place that we are. And I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you. Oliver?
My Yupik name is Ikidanluk. My English name is Oliver Tyrrell. My pronouns are he, him. I'm Yupik and Inupiaq with family in and from Amarok, Alaska. I was born in Fairbanks, Alaska, but I now reside on the lands of the Dena'ina people in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm FTM transgender, and I also serve on the board of directors for Native Movement. I have written many resolutions in support of LGBTQ activism and helped create many safe spaces for Indigenous queer youth. I come to this panel in hopes to share my perspective.
Thank you, Oliver. Qasuġlana?
Ululotak uvanga Qasuġlana siknusog miunga anagamayak akaga ilyachlak apaga Amarok kuvesuktunga monga kama Paqpaluk. My name is Barb Amarok. I was named Qasuġlana after Orville Akinga's grandmother. I'm from Nome. My family left when I was 6 years old, and I returned after attending university. I am Inupiaq. My pronouns are she and her. My grandfather was from Big Diomede on the Russian side. His second wife, my grandmother, was from Ukivak, King Island, and here in the Bering Strait region, and my mother was born and raised in Nome. My work has mainly been in K-12 education, but I currently work for the university. I have always focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I feel that this is the place where I've been most able to effectively serve my communities, and I'm very honored to be here with Paqpaluk and Oliver and Manak and Ilikusi, and I'm very honored to be also working with Casey McMillan and Hudson Boldu. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I would now like to go over the agreements. For those of us who are on the panel, please stand to be understood and bring your whole self into the conversation. For those who are listening, please listen to understand and keep an open mind. Listeners, also please feel free to use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen to ask the panelists that they may address at the end of their discussion. You are more than welcome to use the chat feature, but please be sure to put your questions in the Q&A feature so we don't miss them. Another agreement is we want to value our time together. We want to be able to hear from everyone and allow us to answer the questions from the listeners. We are also responsible for our experiences. Panelists, you are here to share your perspectives on your identity to build a collective understanding from the three of you. This work helps inform our community and lends a voice to those who do not feel comfortable to speak. To the audience, as you hear the thoughts shared, take note of the place you feel discomfort and use the time to think about your responsibility to the community around you. We do this work to make sure there is a space to take care of each other. Is this something we can all agree to, panelists? Okay. We can now move on into the discussion. Our first subject will be self-perception. And I would like to ask each of you what does it mean to be Indigenous to you? Oliver, if you'd like to start.
Yeah. Being Indigenous to me is a sacred dance with my ancestors' heartbeat, a connection that roots me in the land's wisdom and resilience. It means carrying the stories of triumph and adversity, a responsibility to honor the struggles who came before me. As someone who who quote unquote doesn't look native, I'm constantly navigating the bridges between my culture and identity and the privileges of being perceived as white. Being Indigenous and transgender adds another layer, reclaiming the authenticity and challenging colonial narratives, a commitment to activism and my people.
Thank you, Oliver. Qasuġlana.
I had to write that down, that last thing you said, Oliver, commitment to activism. Thank you. I'm proud to be Inupiaq. I'm grateful because what we learn and what we are taught throughout our lives benefits us individually and collectively. Our knowledge benefits everyone who learns. We learn how to relate to the environment. We learn that humans are part of a whole that is to be respected and protected. We learn that there are reasons for our practices with naming. I just learned that Ilikusi, the baby, who was being held by another person here at the campus. And I just learned that the person that was holding Ilikusi, her children used to be babysat by Ilikusi, who this baby was named after. So one of the most important purposes of our naming practice is to make connections with people outside of our immediate families. Practices raising children, hunting and harvesting, and importantly, with how we interact with each other. These are the things that we learn. We learn to be strong but sensitive. We learn to enjoy humor but not to ridicule. We learn to defer to elders, especially when we don't agree. We learn to respect infants and children as we would the people they're named after. We teach children about who they're named after. We learn to communicate with touch, tone of voice, body expressions, and silence. Children learn by listening, observing, being patient. They learn by being praised. They develop identity, confidence, and strength so that they can fulfill their responsibilities in their roles with the family and in the community. Over thousands of years, we have employed effective systems of education and justice. When I visit any of the smaller communities in the Bering Strait region, where the majority of the populations are Alaska Native, I feel a strong sense of safety. I feel a strong sense of belonging. The topic of this sharing is Indigenous identity. Because to be Indigenous in a place where the history and interactions of different groups of people is complex, much of what I share and what I experience on a daily basis relates to systems. Systems have made as large an impact on me as my family has. As David Wallace Adams has written, the results for many of systems new to a long-established society have been extinction of identity. Thank you.
Thank you, Qasuġlana. Darlene.
So I appreciate hearing the poetry of your words, Oliver, and it's hard to follow Qasuġlana because she is so eloquent and thoughtful about the words that she uses. When I was thinking about what does it mean to be Indigenous for myself, I want to start by saying a lot of it for me is about community and about my responsibility to that community. It's about our collective experience and how we're all responsible for creating a collective experience that lifts each of us up. It's about connection. It's about our care for one another. And it's really about love. That's at the forefront. I feel really compelled to share that Manuk is my daughter. And Ilakusi is my grandson, but he is also my mother, brought back to us. And I think what has driven me to focus on my native side, has really been about making sure that my children and my grandchildren can experience the world in a safe way, in a way that respects who they are and brings all of what they are into our community, that they have a place in it. And very much like Oliver, before I got my Qasuġlana, I presented not necessarily as Native. I presented as a fair-skinned something. You couldn't really tell. I think that's kind of the consensus when I am away from my community. It's like a little bit of, what are you? Are you Asian? But now that I have my chin tattoo, it's clear, there's more understanding. So I think when I think about what it means for me to be an Indigenous person, I have a responsibility to making sure that people like my children, but also Oliver and Qasuġlana and our whole community feels like they have a sense of place, and it's my responsibility to create that through my relationships and my work.
Thank you all. Our next question is, how do you feel about labels, self-assigned or otherwise? Mom, do you want to start?
Sure. I have a lot of mixed feelings about labels. I think for myself, I proudly say I'm Inupiaq, and that's, something that I'm very, very proud of. And I proudly say that I'm a mother. I proudly say that I'm a grandmother. I proudly say that I am, I missed it in my introduction. I'm a little nervous to be truthful here. I'm the daughter of Jerome Trigg Sr. and Barbara Trigg, Ilakusi. And so in all of those ways, there's many ties to who I am as a person. And there's a lot of assumptions that can be built into that. It's not just about the way that I talk about myself, which is very important. And I do find each of those labels of mother, grandmother, Inupiaq very valuable, a daughter, a wife, a community member. But when people take that information and they create their own narrative around what that means, or they're not engaged in being curious when they don't understand those types of labels, or I'm assigned a label that doesn't reflect what I bring to the table myself. Like Oliver, I presented for a very long time as a I didn't necessarily look Native, which meant I got a lot of people talking to me in ways that they wouldn't talk to a Native person, saying things to me that maybe others might not say if I presented with brown skin, black hair, and darker eyes, which really made me feel a lot of uncomfortable feelings. People would make the comments about stereotypes about Natives to me in my space, in my home, and trying to find a voice in helping people understand is not a simple thing. So I really think it's important for us to think about, like, how do I identify and what is it that I say about myself, and bringing that to the surface versus and hearing that from somebody else, making space for the other person to clearly identify those things that are important to them. And checking myself when I'm not doing that. No one's perfect. We live in a place where bias comes out. And a lot of it is because we're ignorant and we don't understand. And so pulling on that curiosity, pulling and finding safe ways for me to not put somebody on the spot, but to learn about something myself so that I'm not labeling somebody inappropriately or in a way that's hurtful to them, I think is important when I think about labels.
Thank you, Mom. Oliver?
Yeah. So labels, both self-assigned and imposed by others, can be incredibly complex. On one hand, they can provide a sense of identity and community, helping me understand and communicate my experiences navigating the world. They can also be really, really empowering, especially when it comes to me embracing being Yupik and Inupiaq and, Indigenous. But it also, my transgender identity is also extremely powerful. However, labels can be extremely limiting and, putting you in a box, and it tends to flatten the full richness of my identity. With being Indigenous and transgender, I often find myself navigating the intersections between these multiple labels. And in the colonial world that we live in, that comes with a lot of hardships at times. But it's crucial to recognize that labels don't capture the entirety of who I am. They are facets of a multifaceted identity. And ultimately, I appreciate me being able to communicate with others who I am in such a short way, but it is extremely limiting at times. I also really value the fluidity of identity and labels, and understanding that, identity and your labels will change over time. And it may not fit into just one category. There are multiple categories and boxes, but with labels, they tend to put you in that one box. And so just taking the time to understand that it's fluid and it's ever evolving. One of our Indigenous values is like, you never stop learning. So just understanding that and realizing over time that people change, and valuing the labels that people come with, but also not confining them to those labels.
Thank you, Oliver. I like that you mentioned that labels are fluid and that they are always ever changing. Qasuġlana?
Thank you. Hearing Oliver's message reminded me that so I only started learning Inupiaq language when I was in my 50s. And it was a surprise to me to find out that I know that Qasuġlana and Inupiaq originally, when speaking about someone in third person, don't have gender. It's just third person. So hearing Oliver makes me wonder if this compartmentalization and this need to label are something that we're maybe relatively new in the big picture for us. I don't really know. But although there are negative labels that people have turned around to demonstrate pride in identity, generally, I think labeling others is not productive and has clearly been very hurtful and harmful. When we talk about labeling, we're not just talking about the derogatory names we assign to groups of people. We're also talking about the assumptions that we make about individuals who are members of a group of people. When when we label children in school as failures, we are not building them up to be the best that they can be, which is the intention of schooling. Comments like, "You're so smart for a Native student," and "Native children are deprived," "Native children are deficient," are forms of labeling that are very destructive. When some label people that they're afraid of, that they don't understand, and or show hatred toward, it's important to remember that the message is more about the person giving it than it is about the people on the receiving end. And these situations do present teaching and learning opportunities. And I think that we have to be strong if we are to make changes and transform not only systems, but enlighten people, that we have to step up and share messages. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Our next question is, has your connection to your identities evolved or changed over time? Qasuġlana, would you like to start this one?
Yes, the answer is yes. I have always known that I'm different in my home, and growing up, my brothers and my sisters, they can pass for white, and I'm the one that doesn't match. So my experiences are different from theirs. And I appreciate hearing from Paqpaluk and Oliver and other friends I have, because for most of my life, I I only understood my experience. I didn't understand that my brothers and sisters experiences, what happened to them, the assumptions that were made about them, the labels that were put on them, was harmful to them. I only saw it from my point of view until relatively recently in my life. But as a young person, I clearly remember wishing that I looked like the children in my elementary school textbooks. I never came close to that definition of goodness and that definition of beauty. My family's foods and teachings were not included in my formal schooling. I thought I was deficient. I felt shame. I developed shame. I still feel a twinge of fear, even at my age, when I hear messages that judge and assume. But the feeling is more often now anger, especially when I see behaviors and messages that negatively affect children. I'm very proud to say that this university is a place where this teaching and learning occurs, so that we're supported and serving our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Qasuġlana. Oliver?
Can you repeat the question really quickly? My Wi-Fi cut out.
Yeah. The question is, has your connection to your identities evolved or changed over time?
Absolutely. My connection to my identities has evolved significantly over time. You know, as a 17-year-old, I have gone through this dynamic process of self-discovery, self-acceptance, and understanding. The journey of embracing not only my Indigenous identity, but also my transgender and queer identity it's marked by, growth, challenges, and profound moments of realization. In terms of my Indigenous identity, I've deepened my connection with my Yupik and Inupiaq heritage, exploring cultural practices, traditions, languages, storytelling, and so many other things that my people still practice to this day. And then learning about the history of my people has strengthened my sense of belonging and pride within my indigeneity. Navigating the complexities of being queer and Indigenous has also been a continuing learning experience. shaping my perspectives of identity, privilege, and cultural intersections. Regarding my transgender identity, the journey has involved an immense amount of self-reflection and a really hard time of acceptance, and also learning how to advocate for who I am. Understanding and embracing my gender identity has been absolutely transformative. And through that, I have not only become the young man that I am today, but I've also become an advocate for Indigenous queer rights. And through this, I'm able to contribute to a broader conversation about acceptance and inclusion. Overall, the evolution of my identities has been nuanced and is still an ongoing process. It's about discovering new layers of myself, reconciling the different aspects of my identity, and recognizing that, like I said before, identity is fluid, and allowing room for myself to grow and to adapt. Because each experience, whether challenging or affirming, has contributed to a deeper understanding of not only who I am, but the generations who have come before me and who they are. And with this, I'm able to understand who I am and the unique perspective that I'm able to bring not only to spaces like this, but to hopefully so many other youth and so many other people, not just within the state of Alaska, but hopefully one day around the world.
Thank you, Oliver. I really like what you have continued to say during our conversation. Mom, Darlene?
I think it's an interesting question. How has identity evolved over time? I was raised by my grandparents, and they are both first language Inupiaq speakers, like that was their language at home, and grew up, were born in and grew up during the era in which children were required to go to school. It was a federally imposed law. So the kind of education that they would have received inside their family homes and inside the community areas was changed. And they experienced the kind of education where if you didn't fit in, the hands were hit, that kind of thing. There was a detrimental, really challenging time for young children to be educated. And so when I came along, my parents were retired. They had already raised their children. They had already, gone through that whole phase of life. And for me, what they saw in this fair-skinned baby was the opportunity for somebody to be successful. And so they very purposefully chose to only speak English to me. And I did not learn to speak Inupiaq. I still, I think there's a block in me because of that. Like I have a hard time with it, even now. But what that taught me as a young person who, my parents were retired. So what did we do? We spent all of our time on the land. We were out in the country every single day. So from a very early age, I understood and could see the process of how we did things, right? So putting away food was the primary focus of all of our time, it felt like. And so I spent a lot of time gathering greens, all different kinds, and berries and fishing and, being around when they were hunting and cutting food. And it was just like, that was the constant in my life. So I feel like I had, and they were givers, so they gave so much of that away because my dad was able to provide. So that's the foundation, right? Can't speak my language, but I have this like unique experience of being somebody my age who was raised in that way. So I learned really young to code switch. It, depending on whatever space I was in, was what I was. If I was in a place where it was more beneficial to be native and speak like my parents spoke to each other at home, which, was not perfect English, then that's what I did. And when I would go into our communities, because in my 20s, my job was to travel into the villages and, you know, do work in our communities, that it made it I felt very comfortable. I felt like it was really easy for me to be accepted because I had the language and I could understand because of how I was raised. But also in school, you know, I definitely knew what to turn on there too. And it was not about, had very little to do with my Native identity. It had more to do with my ability to communicate in a way that was perceived as smart. And in fact, I literally had the words that Qasuġlana said to me earlier, who also, by the way, was my 4th grade teacher. I just throw that one in there. She said, you know, children are often said, "You're so smart for a Native." Those words were said to me, actively said to me in high school when I was, you know, going to school at Nome Belts High School here in Nome. And it took me so long to realize that I didn't have to change who I was as a person to be accepted and loved and cared for. And in fact, the more authentic I am to my identity, the more that I can be in my skin and be who I am through and through, the stronger my voice is, and the more I feel good about myself. And I didn't always feel that way. I didn't always feel like I could just be Native. You know, I have a really hard time with people when people feel like they have to label, they're walking in 2 worlds. I live in one world. I am who I am in this world. I give no F's about trying to fit into whatever construct now that I'm working in. I am who I am.
I'm so grateful to have you as a mom to show me how to be my true self wherever I am. So thank you, Mama. Our next question is, when did you first notice the way that others perceive you and did not align with how you identify yourself? Qasuġlana, would you like to go first?
Sure. I don't think that people make assumptions about my identity. I'm obviously a person of color, and I'll add that now I have an added identity of being an older person, and I've seen that how people interact with me has changed now. So not that people make assumptions about my identity, but the assumptions that people have made throughout my life and work, and to this day about my capability, have caused me great pain, and with work have arrested my opportunity several times. It's a complex situation. While I think it's respectful not to make assumptions about the capabilities of people based on their color, it's also necessary to avoid attempts to be, quote, colorblind, unquote, which can also negate a person's identity. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Oliver?
Yeah, so obviously, with me being trans from a very young age, I had an extreme profoundness that I was not the way that others perceived me. And, you know, I consistently told my mom throughout my entire childhood that I was a boy. I would walk up to her after she got me my first makeup kit, and she would find like the brown eyeshadow like all over my chest, and I would go, look, I'm a boy, I'm a man. She'd be like, no, sweetie, no. And I would be like, yeah, I am. And, you know, just constantly being perceived as a girl throughout my entire childhood, not only from my mom, but from my dad's parents. And, just the people around me impacted me in such a profound way. And it wasn't until I was around 10 years old where I was really able to articulate that I was trans. And I told my mom, and I was like, Mom, I know I'm this. And she said, well, you're 10. Like, you're still a kid, so let's wait. And, we waited and waited, and I had to navigate life growing up in a school where I got to learn my culture. I went to the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School, and I was probably one of the palest people there. And so being perceived as a girl or not Native enough or other things like that was extremely detrimental to me from a really, really young age. And thankfully, I was able to come out as transgender during my freshman year of high school. And being able to show the world, really being able to say with zero regrets and zero hesitation, saying, I am a man. I am a young man who's Indigenous and who's Yupik and Inupiaq and who is a leader within my community was so powerful. And being able to share this with the world, continuing to continuing to be proud of not only the other transgender people who have come before me and really blazed the path that I'm walking through, but also my Indigenous ancestors who have made the way for me. And I'm just so profoundly grateful in order to be able to continue paving that way for the generations to come.
Thank you, Oliver. You're so brave for accepting who you are and coming out and telling the world that you are who you are, and doing the work that you were doing for the future generations. So thank you for that. Mom?
I think, I don't know, so if I don't know that I actually had a space or time where I could clearly identify it. I don't think I ever really felt like I fit in anywhere when I was a young child. My parents, again, grandparents, my dad was a commercial fisherman, which meant I couldn't go to the Head Start. So I went to the preschool here in Nome, which meant I went to school with people who looked like me, but didn't sound like me. And I just didn't fit in there. And when I got into elementary school, there were kids who sounded like me, but didn't look like me. And so I didn't really fit in there. And so it felt very lonely. I think that's just, what I experienced. When I reflect on that time and I look back at how I moved in the world, when at the time where how people perceived me didn't match up to how I felt. I don't know that I was so young, I couldn't put words to it. I couldn't tell you that there were no words, it was just really about feeling lonely. And that was hard. I mean, it's hard for anybody to feel lonely at any point in their life. But that's how it affected me. At that point, things changed over time, obviously.
Our next question is, how have people's assumptions about you impacted your perception of yourself? Oliver?
Yeah. So people's assumption about me has had an astounding impact of the perception of myself, especially considering the intersections of my identities, being Indigenous, being queer, being transgender, but also not at first glance being perceived as Indigenous. the assumptions that others made, whether based on my appearance of my appearance or preconceived notions about these identities, can sometimes create distance between how I see myself and how others perceive me. So learning how to, let it roll off my back and saying, I know who I am. My people know who I am. And ever since I've stepped into that mindset, it has benefited not only my mental health, but the way that I carry myself. And I'm just so grateful to have, I knew Darlene from a really young age. So being able to have leaders like her and my mom, Emily Edenshaw, in my life, and so many powerful role models, really helped me to learn how to step into that mindset and saying, I know my people love me, and like the generations before me would have accepted me. And yeah, it's just so incredibly difficult at times to, let it roll off your back and continue pushing forward. But it's also incredibly important to do so.
Mom?
I think, people's assumptions of me over time have changed. Like I said, earlier, I code switched a lot when I was younger. And so that, was not necessarily to my benefit because I couldn't really be my authentic self, but it certainly people pleased folks around me. Like they were pleased and felt comfortable around me. And I was more focused on that than my own experience. And that was not healthy for me. And now that I feel like I can just be who I am, that I can articulate it now, I can speak to it. I think one of the things that I find now is people make assumptions that my whole purpose in life is to just have a Native agenda. That's been said about me in the past. You have a Native agenda. And that's, I think that I let that hurt me at the time. And I recognize now through the help of people like Qasuġlana and Mariah Salafi and Warren Jones and Ayu Kasutuk and so many people, that the Native agenda is about us being able to be who we are. And so if anybody came to me and said, you have a Native agenda, I'd be like, you're right, I do. I have a Native agenda. That means that you get to be who you are, and I get to be who I am, and that we all get to live in this community and care for each other. Because, I mean, where we live now in Sitnasak, there's only 3,500 of us. If I've got a flat tire or something happens down the road, nobody's gonna, if I see that in someone else, I'm gonna stop. I don't care what their political agenda is or what their thinking or feeling is in the world, you're gonna help them. And likewise, I have no, I feel like people would help me too. And so I think, that's really kind of where I'm at right now is, there is a stigma around being so focused on bringing Native ways of thinking and being into my work, my everyday work, that and that's, volunteerism on boards and other things that I think, I'm working through to this day. It's because I want space to be who I am doesn't diminish who you are, is the message that I'm really trying to focus on putting into spaces when we're talking about, assumptions about what it means to be a Native person.
Qasuġlana?
Thank you. Yes, the assumptions that people have made about me through my life have definitely affected me, usually not for the good, toward the good. The assumptions about what I'm capable of, and more importantly, the assumptions that I am not capable of things have been very devastating. And it's not really just a matter of reaction. I can have this reaction personally, but it happens professionally also. And the results, then I have turned it inward, and there's so many times, more times than not, I have questioned myself. I'm not really capable. I'm not qualified. I'm not good enough. And that has affected my strength. But I think that if we can look at the big picture, look at what is actually happening, and as Oliver and Paqpaluk are doing, take a stand, to be proud, to give our message, people will learn, so that we, Ilikusi and others after us, won't be forced to personally and professionally conform to images of our identity that are not accurate and not real. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Our next question is, how has being Indigenous impacted your experience in employment or higher education? Mom, would you like to go first?
Sure, I would. So I think when we talk about higher education, I had Gwendolyn when I was very young. I was still in high school, and I had a really great support system in high school. I had a principal who was just like, you're going to graduate. Like, they didn't put it to me in any other shape, way, or form. It was just a fact. You're going to graduate high school. So I believed them because they had that confidence in me. And so I did. When it came to going to school, when it came to pursuing higher education, I had not traveled a lot in my life. And so I decided to go to school at UAA, which is very different than my home community. And the campus was the size of my town. It was hard to get from one side to the other for classes, and I felt very out of place. I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. There was no ability, no one reached out to me individually to say, hey, did you know there's a Native Student Services? Did you know that there's, any myriad of resources that were around that could have helped? And I, at 6 weeks into the semester, decided that I just couldn't do it. It was too hard. So I went to my academic advisor, and they said, well, I'm not going to stop you. I don't know why you're here. And there was not a level of support there. That was their response to me. And I just said, okay, well, then tell me the process for withdrawal so I can leave. And they happily walked me through that. There was not the same kind of support that I experienced when I was in high school. Like, you're going to do it. There wasn't any question, of trying to support me. So that definitely was my first experience with higher education. And, I've gone to school at UAF. I've gone to school at UAS. And I graduated from UAS with my bachelor's degree in business. And each of those experiences was different. Going to school in Fairbanks, there was a Native Student Services. And I had the ability to kind of reach into that a little bit. Gwendolyn, my daughter, was in childcare there, and there were some activities inside of that she got to participate in. I don't think she would remember them, but there was an opportunity for her to just connect me with parents and others that helped me to build a community. People asked questions about how I was doing, and didn't work out for me to stay at UAF. And so when I transferred into UAS and I was able to connect with Colleen at Native Student Services there, and the immense amount of support and community that they created at that campus was extraordinary. And to have our own graduation and to have, it was amazing. So I think each campus I've experienced something different. Now you have to understand, I began my higher education in 1998 and I graduated in golly, maybe 10 years, almost 10 years ago. Took me, my college career was long, you know, as a mother. So there was that. And you know, it really does make a difference when somebody cares about you and that they can help you navigate the challenges of being in a different place. Being Indigenous in my work, you know, I've been the gamut. I've been the token Native, you know, as a part of leadership development initiatives. And I've also, you know, been embraced with my employer for just bringing my cultural values into the workplace and celebrated for it. So it's been the gamut for me in as far as work goes.
Thank you, Mama. Oliver?
Yeah, so being Indigenous has significantly experienced my experiences in both employment and higher education, especially considering that I started taking full-time college classes when I was halfway through my sophomore year at the age of 15. You know, being Indigenous has enriched my perspective in academic settings and in academia. I bring a cultural lens that contributes to a more diverse and comprehensive understanding of various subjects, especially growing up going to the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School. My Indigenous identity serves as kind of a bridge between my academic pursuits and my community, because I hope to become either a therapist or an MD, psychiatrist, to give back to my community. And it reinforces the importance of education, not only for my personal growth, but also to contribute back to my community that helped raise me. And, you know, part of that really has to do with my work that I've done. I'm now in a leadership role at this super cool program for Indigenous youth interested in STEM, where I got to shadow a couple of radiation oncologists. And, you know, I created this project about greeting Indigenous patients in their Indigenous languages, you know, Indigenous cancer patients in their Indigenous languages, in order to help with cultural revitalization, language revitalization, and connect patients to providers, and being able to see the change and, you know, see, you know, people's faces and elders' faces light up when we greet them in their Indigenous language, and how much more they trust us as providers to deliver care. And it just feels so fulfilling in order to be able to give back to my community in that way. So being Indigenous has helped me bring, I would like to think, you know, a better experience to within healthcare, which is really one of my biggest passions.
Thank you, Oliver. Qasuġlana?
Thank you. I think that's wonderful. The plans that you have, Oliver. There is movement today in the systems, in the health system, in the education system, for delivery and message to be respectful, relevant, effective. I know with the university, this university you can see it. University of Alaska Fairbanks has adopted the UA Board of Regents has adopted the Alaska Native Success Initiative with goals of increasing staff and faculty numbers of Indigenous, and also ensuring authentic, inclusive content among the programs. We have the Alaska Native Language Center. Manuk is the lead at our campus for our Indigenous language project, where we're pulling in master fluent speakers to work with apprentice teachers to become adjunct faculty. We've got quite a cohort now, including Qasuġlana, Atasiak, Qasuġlana, Chakot, and others that are going to go back to their home communities to do the teaching and learning to maintain our Indigenous languages. So, and the university also has a very intentional focus on diversity, equity, inclusion projects and programs. So I think being Indigenous today and being involved at university is much different than it was when I first started with my experience. There was nothing back then like we have now. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud to be part of this university. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, how can university staff, faculty, and administrators best support our diverse students and employees? Oliver?
Yeah, so it's imperative that people actively cultivate an inclusive and supportive environment for everybody. Diversity is not just a concept, but a fundamental strength that enriches community. First, I believe cultivating inclusive policies that champion diversity and equality. These policies should not just merely exist on paper, but be embedded into the very foundations of institutions. Education is an extremely powerful tool for change as well. Regular diversity inclusion training for all staff, faculty, and administrators can go an extremely long way. It's also an opportunity for people to address unconscious biases, enhancing cultural competency, and learn strategies for fostering inclusive environments. And along with mental health support is also an absolute necessity, establishing services that are not only accessible, but culturally sensitive and inclusive, recognizing and addressing the unique stressors that individuals from diverse backgrounds may face. Safe spaces, I believe, are also extremely crucial. Having designated areas on campuses where individuals from a multitude of diverse backgrounds can express themselves freely and find the support and community that they need. These spaces could be, LGBTQ centers, cultural hubs, or infinity groups, or, just different things like that, having a place for community to be with your people. And, belonging is at the core of our culture and community. We must actively foster a sense of belonging for every member within our shared communities. Creating an inclusive campus where culture and individuals from diverse backgrounds feel valued, respected, and connected. And then, also people have to not forget to celebrate diversity. We're each beautiful as an individual within our communities. That could be as simple as, organizing events that celebrate and highlight the richness within different communities, cultural festivals awareness campaigns, recognition of significant cultural observances, and of course languages, because languages tie us all together. So thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the introduction of the panel, the reason why we're doing this panel is in honor of Native American and Alaska Native Heritage Month. So thank you, Oliver, for reminding me of that. Mom?
I am so grateful for Oliver speaking first in this one, and for this question, truthfully. I think one of the things that, if we're going to talk about what can university staff, faculty, and administrators do to support students, is to listen to students. I mean, just let's listen to students. And Oliver said it so well. Making sure that we have training, making sure that there's spaces for people to be seen, all of those things are important. And I think the reason why I feel like I'm empowered to be a leader now is because people in my community listened to me, and that they gave me space to grow, and that was something that was really important for my development. And so, number one, follow the lead of our young people. When they ask for something, they're not asking for nothing. They're not asking for no reason. They're not asking to be funny or critical. They're asking for a reason. And I'll just go on to say two other things very, very quickly. I love that you said cultural competency, Oliver. I would say that we need to be humble. Every single one of us needs to have a sense of humility in knowing that we cannot fully understand and be competent in somebody else's being. Only that person can be fully competent. So we want to be humble enough to recognize that just because you've received some training, that doesn't mean that you fully have depth and understanding of what it means to be whatever they identify as. And that there has to be no more space in conversations for people to say, I'm colorblind, or I see people as equal. That dismisses people's experience, that dismisses people's, that the fact that the systems were designed to uphold something that wasn't reflective of everyone. And so we need to lose that language of colorblind inside of our spaces, inside universities. There's no space for that anymore. We all have to take some responsibility in creating an environment that, as Oliver said, I want to reiterate everything that Oliver said, fosters a sense of a community for the young folks, follow their lead.
Thank you. Qasuġlana?
I say just what Oliver and Paqpaluk just said. That's what I say. I mean, because it has to be systemic. This change, this transformation has to be foundationally in the systems. When our teacher education programs in our universities here in our state effectively educate and prepare people to go into our communities, come into our communities in our region where the school populations are at the very least 85% Alaska Native Indigenous. They need to be ready to build up each child to be the best that he or she can be according to their personal definitions, and according to the definitions of the family, according to the definitions of the communities, not according to their individual definitions or the definitions of where they come from. And there's this saying that I used to spit out all the time: organizations are perfectly designed to get the results they are getting. So clearly our K-12 system, for Indigenous children and for the benefit of all children, need to transform to be more effective. And as individuals in university, as faculty, as staff, as administrators, we need to be willing we need to be eager to learn, to be open, to understand that we will make mistakes, but we are trying. Darrell Sue writes about how microaggressions are constant and continual in the lives of people of color, and that we experience these offensive behaviors every day from the moment we wake until the time we go to sleep, from the time we are born until we die. And some people don't understand this. And it's not just about the color of our skins. It's about these other characteristics that we have that people have made assumptions about and that people have judged. So the deeper the understanding that we have, the stronger each of us can be. When some people think that racism or homophobia don't occur today, they haven't experienced it. It's here. It is perpetuated individually and through our institutions, intentionally or unintentionally. And it is felt individually and it is felt collectively. On a daily basis, I am invisible. My messages are ignored. Truth I share is classified as perspective, and assumptions are made about what my accomplishments may or may not be and what I am capable of. On one hand, no one should be blind to these behaviors and messages, but on the other hand, it can be, and we've seen it here through Oliver Paqpaluk, it can be devastatingly painful to recognize it on a daily basis. We need to understand the big picture, know the history of intentional oppression, and label the consequences to people and groups of people. The stronger we are about our identities and histories, the stronger we can be in serving and making our communities better, even though it's the hardest work in the world. We cannot serve and make a difference if our eyes are not open, and we need to acknowledge the harm. Everyone needs to feel the pain, and everyone needs to carry out the work that we are each responsible for. Thank you.
Thank you, Qasuġlana. I really appreciate what you said. Our next question is going to be, how do you acknowledge other people's identities respectfully? For example, if we have a question, do we ask directly? How do we support without singling out? Oliver, would you like to start this one?
Yeah. So acknowledging other people's identities respectfully involves a combination of sensitivity, awareness, and respect for individual boundaries. Using inclusive and neutral language when addressing or referring to individuals avoids assumptions about gender, race, or any other aspects of their identity unless the person has explicitly shared that information. And also paying attention and showing respect to the pronouns that the individual uses. If you are unsure about someone's pronouns, consider using gender neutral pronouns or even asking them in a discreet manner. And then also, actively listening when others share their identity and respect their experiences, and avoid making assumptions or generalizations based off of stereotypes. One thing that I've learned from FAI is, it's something about listening full-heartedly, listening to not respond, but listening to know. And I think that could be used in so many more places than just spaces like this in, everyday conversation. But you also need to foster an inclusive environment where individuals feel comfortable expressing their identities. And sorry, my little sister is knocking at my door. This could be including, imagery, symbols, or creating spaces that really welcome diversity. And consider the context when asking a question as well. In a professional setting, some individuals, may want to keep their private life private, gauge the appropriateness of your questions on the relationship and the setting. And then also take the initiative to educate yourself. This about different identities and different experiences. This can also really help you navigate not only your local community, but, the world. And it could also really help to not be asking insensitive questions. And with that, always be open to learning. We're all students. We're all lifelong students from the moment we're born to the moment we die, pass on. We're lifelong students. So recognizing that everybody's journey is unique and being receptive to new information that people give to you can really help build understanding. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. I really liked the comment you said about listening to not respond, but listening to know. I think that is super important when we're dealing with the diverse world that we live in. Mom?
I think this is a place where I find myself humbled often. I think, and not to say that I'm a person who tries. I'm a person who tries to learn. I'm a person who tries to build some understanding, and I make mistakes, is what I'm trying to say. And in making mistakes, when I have made mistakes, making sure that I acknowledge them and making sure that I communicate with the person that I may have hurt. I don't want to repeat all the things that Oliver said, because those things were really important. Making sure that we take the time to be discreet, making sure that we take the time to educate ourselves. Those are all of the important things that we need to do. But I really think that the thing that I wanted is to hit home on here is you're going to make mistakes. And we live in a society where mistakes are they're judged as, we feel like we're being judged as this horrible person. And in truth, you can work to reconcile that, and you can be humble in those moments, and you can find ways to learn from your experiences, and be better the next time, and be better for the next person. And I think that's something that I want to make sure that, we bring into the conversation. I have had this profound experience in my life when we were in this summer, and I'm not going to remember what year it was, but there was a summer where there was so many Black men being killed by policemen, and we had just had this amazing experience. Like, as a team of people who worked for First Alaskans, we all left. We were away from cell service. We all went to Qasuġlana Lake. We had this moment to just be with each other and to just have this nice moment, with each other. Like, we were all doing this work to be good allies in those moments up to that day. And people were tired, and we just needed a minute to come up for air. And we came out of a Qasuġlana Lake area, and we were back in cell service, and I opened up social media, and Philando Castile had been killed. And it was just this moment of so much pressure, right? Like, it was just like, oh, we just can't this just end? And it was really fast. There was community organizing that happened really quickly around Black Lives Matter rally. And it was a group of people in Anchorage that coordinated and organized that. And I, standing in solidarity in those moments with that community as they were experiencing grief, profound grief, over and over and over again, was another moment that I just want to say that being an ally in those kinds of moments and showing up for others is really important. And I'm in a season in my life where I don't use social media in that way anymore. It's not the way that I find most effective to communicate how strongly I feel about others. But finding your way to do that's meaningful is important as well.
Thank you, Mom. Qasuġlana?
Thank you. I had written down one word even before Oliver started talking. I wrote down learning. It's about learning, and that's what Oliver shared. And sometimes learning can be facilitated more effectively when you're part of a group. I think it was about 15 years ago. We were talking about this just before this presentation started. Paqpaluk here in Nome was one of the ones who initiated Andor here in Nome out of First Alaskans Institute, Alaska Native Dialogues on Racial Equity. And she came to me and she said, "Do you want to be involved? We're going to do this." And I said, "What? You're going to do this in Nome? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, I definitely see the need, but it just sounds too scary to me." But she was determined. There was a very small group of people that worked on that, developed it, provided several conversations for the public, very planned, very facilitated, mainly to ensure that it was a safe space for everybody involved. There was one conversation here at the campus, but I think you have to be brave, you have to be strong, and you have to be open. And like Paqpaluk said, you have to be willing to accept that when we're learning, we're going to make mistakes. So when we're trying to acknowledge respectfully, and how do we communicate when we're not sure of how to behave and what to say, we have to understand that we're going to make mistakes, but that we can address them. So I think in a group, it might be easier because first, I think it's important to establish agreements or ground rules for this kind of discussion. Everybody involved, like Manak did with this presentation, everybody involved in a conversation about identity must be willing to be open, willing to withhold an immediate reaction of judgment. We need to be willing to look at why we may be afraid or why we tend to be judgmental. I and everybody else need to ask, what have I learned that causes me to feel discomfort? What have I learned that causes me to be judgmental? And is this really who I am? Is this really who I want to be? It's difficult. These are the most difficult discussions that you can have, but we have to be part of them. We have to promote them and be part of them. Thanks.
Thank you, Qasuġlana. Our last question from the panel will be, what brings you joy about your identities? How about Qasuġlana, would you like to go first?
Okay, my response is short. So I just purchased Ned Blackhawk's book. And as Ned Blackhawk has written, Indigenous peoples want to ensure that systems no longer threaten our existence. For people to look at systems with a critical eye, and as Wayne Owl writes, critique the knowledge that has historically been Eurocentric brings me joy. What brings me joy is the critique of knowledge in systems. For systems to authentically represent Indigenous peoples and history, acknowledge the value of our life ways, and this goes for all groups of people that have been oppressed, and teach knowledge and contributions, that brings me joy, because when systems have authentic messages, truly practice respect, then transformation among our communities will be more foundational and more likely to carry on. But it does get back to each individual, the value that each individual on our planet brings, and the respect that each individual must be given, but is not currently. So I think what brings me joy is to see systems transforming to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Qasuġlana. Mom?
What brings me joy is creating spaces where young people feel empowered. That's where I'm at now. I really love to put, young folks together and have a fun conversation about amazing quotes and help them to dive into the depth and meaning of them. And that's joyful for me. And then to see how much, just like, you can watch a person blossom. And I like when a person is able to just peel back the layers of the things that they thought were true because they lived a specific experience, and then they realized that they have so much value and they have so much to contribute, and making space for that is joyful for me. And so I do that in a lot of different ways. Some of that is with my family. Some of that is, through the work that I'm paid on a day-to-day basis to do. Some of that is through my volunteerism in different spaces. I think it echoes a little bit of what Qasuġlana is saying here. Like, it's work, but in the end, it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding. And to see that we have this generation of little people growing up with native names, indigenous names, they don't have English names, is like, that wasn't a thing, when I was young. And I have so much pride in families who are making choices to do that. And you have to feel safe to be able to do that. Names have a lot of meaning, and they're precious, and they can influence how the world around you impacts, all sorts of things. So to be able to be in a place where we're able to do that is so amazing. That brings me joy.
Thank you. Oliver?
I think what really brings me joy is, kind of similar to Darlene, like connecting my fellow youth with each other and seeing, communities come together and strengthen one another. And, another really big thing about me is I love being with Mother Nature, reconnecting back to the earth. And, I grew up with my dad's family out on the Birch Creek River, and, hunting and trapping. And I think that there was I think for nearly the entire school year, I begged my mom to let me go onto the trap line, and eventually she gave up, and she let me spend about 4 months on the trap line, being with my dad's family, and, being able to reconnect back to the land, just realizing that my ancestors have come before me and, helped make the world that I live in now. And another really big part that brings me joy is knowing that, and then also knowing that I have the potential to do that for the generations to come, and being able, hopefully being a role model to other youth, and, showing them that you can be queer and you can be Indigenous and you have a place within our communities. Our people loved everyone, because of these colonial views that have impacted our people. For a really long time, queer people were shunned within the Indigenous community, and, being able to see that breaking down and, being able to see youth like me being accepted within their communities and having places and being able to connect with within their groups. And it just brings me so much joy seeing the work that the people have come before me have done, and knowing that hopefully I can also impact people to come that way.
Thank you, everyone. I would like to invite you guys to share some closing comments before we go into the Q&A. Qasuġlana, if you would like to start.
Okay. So I think the reasons for the change that I talk about that's needed are personal. They're personal for Paqpaluk, they're personal for Oliver, they're personal for me. Along with what we've been taught as members of Indigenous families and communities, we've been shaped by the behavior of individuals and the processes of institutions. When the knowledge of one of two groups coming together is prioritized, privilege is established. I think that's what Oliver was talking about just now. The results of institutions continue to be oppression and marginalization. Disease, religion, and schooling have aided in the extinction of Indigenous knowledge, identity, and life ways. And as Ned Blackhawk has written, the taught mythologies excise the violence of colonialism. But as scholar Marie Baptiste has written, Indigenous people, Indigenous children, Indigenous knowledge is not deficient. It is devalued. So for equity and respect to be widespread, the change must come individually and institutionally. Someone recently, I heard something on the KNOM radio station recently, and someone said, why can't you make a difference in your community? And most people's responses, including mine, have been to list external reasons, but the bottom line reasons are internal. And we must each garner the strength to speak the truth and transform our systems. So I thank Manak Ilikusi, Oliver, Paqpaluk, Casey, Hudson for this opportunity to share today. Thank you.
Thank you, Qasuġlana. Thank you for sharing all of your perspectives and your experiences that you've had. Mom?
I feel my closing thoughts, have hovered around teaching that was shared from our Maori family. Bentha Mohia came to Alaska in 2014 and posed some questions to a group of people. And his questions were, what counts as knowledge? What knowledge counts? And who decides? And in context of the conversation around identity, you can substitute knowledge in and out of there for other things. What counts as success? What success counts? Who decides? What counts as identity? What identity counts? And who decides? I wanted to say that because I feel like there's so much work that we all collectively need to do. Qasuġlana is so right. She is known for saying institutions are, and I'm going to misquote you. Oh, Lord. They are perfectly
Organization,
designed to get
yeah.
the results that they
Exactly,
get.
get it.
Yes, thank you for helping me. And so what does that mean for us? What does that mean for all of us? It really means that we all have to take some personal responsibility and check ourselves often. That, you know, there's so many times in the day where, you know, I reflect on my day and I think, oh, golly, I really wish I had done that better. Or I wish I had been a little more thoughtful in my communication. And I'm just so grateful there's places like this. You know, this is an avenue for people to really have a meaningful conversation about deep topics, and give space for folks to share some perspectives. And I hope that for those who are listening, that you've felt a whole lot of things, but I'm really hoping that you felt either acknowledged and you also found a place where you have a question in your mind that you need to ponder on a little bit longer. And that you are intentional about making that time to do so. Qasuġlana.
Thank you, Mom. Oliver, any closing comments?
Yeah, I just really wanted to thank everybody for their time and their willingness to learn. It's an inspiration, you know, not only to me, but I'm sure to so many other people, because, you know, taking that step can be really hard at times and it calls for a lot of bravery. And, you know, facing yourself and saying, I do need to learn and I do need this is really so inspirational. And, you know, I'm just so thankful that people would make their time out of their day to listen, not only to, you know, a 17-year-old's voice, but also Darlene's voice and Barb's voice. And I, as a transgender queer person and as an Indigenous person, I always want to make sure that my voice is heard. And if I could help one person learn something, or, you know, ask themselves something, but that means that not only my journey, but my ancestors' journey and the people that came before me's journey was all worth it, to just change one person's perspective and, you know, make them think, why do I do that? Or like, maybe I should learn something about this. And so I just want to say, Qasuġlana, for your time and listening to me and, you know, taking that step and joining me in this space. And thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, everyone. We will now address the listeners' questions that came through during the conversation. Someone asks, do any of you have any perspectives or advice on those of us who may be disconnected from their direct family or lacking that history of community growing up? I often feel that I lack identity in both worlds, per se, when it comes to the larger communities such as school.
I'll start. This is Barb, Qasuġlana. I think I know what you're saying. I felt it. I think what you need to do is not be hard on yourself. I think learning takes time. And I think if you make connections, one small connection at a time with people that can help you build yourself up, learn, make further connections. That would be my main point, is don't be too hard on yourself. That would be my main point.
Oliver or Mom, do you have any other thoughts to that person's question?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've heard folks say when it comes to growing up away from their community or growing up away from their history. I mentioned earlier that my parents were retired and that we were pretty much on the land. But that kind of stopped for my family once my dad passed away and I was 7 years old. And so I had this like deep connection and we did things all the time, every day, unless I was at school. That was the life that we lived. And it really just ended pretty immediately after he passed. And I think the thing that I found most helpful was just showing up to things, which can be hard for somebody like me. I am an introvert at heart, like by definition. I am the kind of person who really likes her house. And I feel very comfortable there. And so it can be really challenging for me to be in other spaces. But even in just showing up, even if you're not speaking to people, you're around things, you're around people, you're hearing things, your mind is influenced by the environment around you. There's so many books out there that you can pick up if that's how you enjoy, learning. There's so much content out there. People are creating content constantly, and we're just living in this time where information is just so readily available, and the opportunity for people to connect with others that they identify with. And so there's, showing up for yourself in that way. You have to choose to make the time to engage with that. And I don't want you to feel guilty either. As Qasuġlana said, don't be too hard on yourself, but as you are able, commit that for yourself, and it doesn't have to be going out in public. It could be picking up or turning on YouTube and learning how to bead or some other thing that's connected to your culture. There's lots of that content too. You don't have to leave the comforts of your home to find those little things.
I just want to say something too. My grandma was adopted out. I have never been to Amarok. My mom has one time. And that could also create a really big sense of disconnect to direct family. And I just really want to echo what Darlene and Barbara said, where it's like, don't be hard on yourself. It's a journey and it's a long one. And you will never stop learning. As I've said multiple times throughout this conversation, you're going to be a lifelong learner and you're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. If you mispronounce something, you have people there to help correct you because they want to teach you. And it's, don't be discouraged by the mistakes. You will always learn from them. And you could come back and make the exact same mistake. And, generations of people before you have made mistakes. The way that I like to think of it when I'm trying to trying to learn my Yupik language or Yuhdun is, trying to teach my little sister to speak. She messed up how many times? Like, she still says, like, I got, like, what did she say the other day? Where she was like, Arlo grooted up. And she's been saying that forever. And, no matter how many times we correct her and say, no, baby, it's Arlo grew up, she still says growded. And, think of it like that. It's, you're not going to get it right the first time. You might not get it right the second time or the third time or the fourth time. And that's completely okay. And also finding ways that accommodate you and your learning style is really important too.
Thank you for answering that person's question. Our next question is, what support can be given to foster children? How can these children connect to their identity?
I feel compelled to jump in here a little bit. So, I mean, let's just say that children who are in the foster system are in a system. Number one, it's a system that is not designed to, I mean, it's there to protect kids, to take them out of environments that may have been challenging for them. They may need, safe space. But that system in itself is, it's not one that is helpful for Native children. And of course, Native children are just significantly disproportionately represented inside of it. And even those who are at the top of the system at one point, I was privileged enough to be a part of a conversation where people were identifying, why do we have the challenges? Why did foster children face the challenges they do? And racism was right there at the top. It was the thing that was said more often than any other reason. Why are children in the foster care system racism? And so there's a lot of things that we can do. I mean, we can be an advocate for changing the system. We can, so you can take it so many different ways. If you're looking for a direct way, if you're a foster parent, and you are away from where that child's home community is, always trying to advocate to get them home as quickly as possible, connected to their family as quickly as possible, creating any and every, being available for any opportunity for them to be in that family environment. Those are things that you can do. If you're away, and if that's not possible, if you are living in maybe a larger community or you're in one of the hubs, taking them to Native events, allowing the child to just be like other children in the space is really important. I think about like the collective in Native spaces, the collective care for children. They've got enough guardrails around them that they're going to be safe. They're going to be okay. They may make a lot of noise. We don't care. We love that. We welcome that. They may, get into things that, maybe we wouldn't want them to get into, but they're just learning their environment and they're free to do so. So allowing for that to happen. And checking your words when you're with children too, they hear things. And so if you're able to foster their ability to, speak about their home, good or bad or otherwise, that helps them to feel heard. Those are a few thoughts that I have.
I totally agree with Paqpaluk. We need to have the big picture in mind. I mean, if we think about the fact that in this region of Alaska, there is archaeological evidence of indigenous life here starting at least 12,000 years ago. So our contact time now and our time of change has only been a few hundred years out of that 12,000 years. So as Elsie Boudreau says, well, what else would you expect but some turmoil within our families and within our society? I think, but with children who are in a system, systems are perfectly designed to get the results they're getting. Like Darlene and I say, we are formed by systems, particularly if you are a foster child. When they do not represent us, the children become deformed. I think anybody who works with foster children has to understand that it should not be the intention of that institution to deform the child to be something that he or she was not born to be. That should not be the intention. I think being honest with children, I don't think that we're honest enough with children. Children are open. They're more fair and much less judgmental than any adult I know. They respect people. They love people, like your little sister, Oliver. She probably just wanted to be with you and see what you're doing. They love people. they don't judge like we adults do. So I think being honest with children helps them be stronger. They can make more informed decisions as they grow. And I think tribes help too.
Thank you. We had a comment come through as we were answering the last question. Somebody says the Yupik word piura. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Piura is an expression meaning continuing to be who you are. I wish I had the precise definition, but I'm quickly trying to answer the person who just inquired about being disconnected from the direct family. We can only be who we are and learn at that moment, as Oliver was saying earlier, Biura. So thank you for that comment. There was also many comments of thanks for holding this conversation and appreciation. And I just want to say thank you to the listeners for coming in and listening. There was one other question that came in, and hopefully we can answer this one quickly as we are running out of time. The last question is, are there ways to express queer and trans identities in languages in Yupik? Would any of you know the answer to that question?
I unfortunately don't, but I do know that there are some stories about men giving birth and different things like that, and like showing two-spirit people within Yupik communities, but I'm not knowledgeable to the point in Yupik language to know that yet. I'm a forever learner, so I will find out eventually. Circle back to me in like 5 years.
Biura, you learned it. The last person shared it. Be who you are.
Yeah.
That's a part of it, I think.
Okay. So as we close out, I would like to thank each of our panelists, Qasuġlana to each of our panelists, Darlene, Oliver, and Qasuġlana, for sharing your whole selves and your experiences, and giving a voice to those who are not able to speak for themselves, and giving guidance to those who are trying to be allies. Your words today show that the beauty of your identities can outweigh the hardships, and your guidance to those who feel lost or disconnected is appreciated. Thank you to the listeners for joining us today. Please keep an eye out for any upcoming Shine a Light presentations at nwc.uaf.edu or facebook.com/uaf.nwc. If you would like to share the recording or give any feedback, you can do so by visiting the Community and Events tab at nwc.uaf.edu. We will now be closing out the webinar, and have a wonderful day. Thank you all.